Alright, welcome everyone. Thanks for watching this video. Here we're going to be talking about how to prepare for final exams. Now this is actually for several different audiences. First audience is maybe you're a student who hasn't taken a final exam before. And because of the pandemic, for a lot of schools, final exams have been postponed. And so this may be a brand new experience. Or maybe you're a parent and you want to look for ways to help your child. This video will help you also. And then finally, for teachers, this is something that can give you some information, some useful tips that you can share with your students to give them a leg up, to help them perform at their best on their final exams. So the overall outline, we're going to be talking about what to do before, during, and after studying, before, during, and after testing, mindsets, and some specific tactics that you can employ to help. And I always like to start with a good quote, and this is something that's always stuck out. It always seems impossible until it's done. And for a lot of people, final exams seems like a very daunting task. But hopefully through this video, we can break it down into some manageable steps that you can implement right here, right now, to give you confidence and to give you the capability to perform at your best. So where do we start? Well, before we even start studying, there's a few things we have to talk about. So the first thing is know your grades. Make sure that your teacher has the grade book up to date. Now, most schools these days have an online grade book of some sort, and you should be checking that. Make sure that your teacher has everything up to date. Because once you have that up to date, now, whether your school goes by quarters or by semesters, what you want to do is you want to take that information and you want to find a GPA calculator online. And you can just Google that, final exam calculator, and there'll be a bunch that pop up. And what you'll do is you'll type in the information with the grades you already have. And what those calculators will tell you is they'll tell you, here's the grade you need to get on the exam in order to get the final grade for the semester. Knowing that information is really helpful going in because it sets your expectations as to what is possible and what is not. Now, once you've done that, what you want to do is you want to list out all the tests, the subjects, the dates, and your goal. Because you've already looked at what's possible and now you want to set a goal for each one. And so this is the first step because what it does is it puts down on paper all the exams you need to be taking and when they're going to happen. And then you're putting down a specific goal that you're going to shoot for. Now, what's the goal? Well, that's up to you. You get to decide that. Now, once you've set aside what the times are, what the subjects are, what you want to do next is you want to take a sheet of paper and write down the topics for each test. Now, if you just have a few topics and can't fill the piece of paper, you may need to get a little more information. Now, if you're having trouble condensing it all into a single page, you may need to ask your teacher to say, okay, what are some of the bigger ideas? Because there should be enough information to fill a single page, but you should be able to organize it in such a way. Now, hopefully your teacher gives you a study guide. Now, if not, or if they do, a lot of my students recommend that you use Quizlet. It's a free online platform that has a lot of pre-made quizzes. Now again, you do this after you write down the topics, because once you know what the topics are, then if you need to use Quizlet, now you know what topics you should be looking up. But before you do that, you want to be sure that if your teacher does, that he or she is offering a study guide for you to work on. Because no one knows best what's going to be on the test like the teacher does. And those study guides are often some of the best ways of giving you a glimpse as to what the test should be like. Now, once you've done that, what you want to do is you want to prioritize your tests. Now, how do you prioritize your tests? Well, that's kind of up to you. Some students will prioritize based on the chronological order that the tests show up. So they're going to put their priority in terms of the first test that happens, and the least priority with the last test. Other students will prefer to prioritize based on which classes they can get the highest grades in, and they'll put the priority on that. Now, I'm not going to tell you how you're going to prioritize them, because every situation is a little different. But you need to decide which test is going to get your attention. Now, speaking of that, you also need to budget your study times. Now, budgeting is usually a word reserved for money, but you've often heard the phrase that time is money. And what you need to do is you need to think about the available time you have, whether it's a week, 2 weeks, whatever you've got. And you want to look at all that available time and decide, okay, how much time can I spend on each of these subjects in a single session? Is it 15 minutes? 30 minutes? An hour? Be honest with yourself. Really be honest and say, how long can I spend looking at one single subject? And maybe it's different for each subject, and that's okay. You need to be able to identify what it is, how much time you can spend on each subject. And then once you've identified how much time you can spend, then you want to schedule it. And I recommend writing this down. Or if you want to do it electronically, go make a spreadsheet. Go make a spreadsheet and put it in terms of hour increments or half-hour increments, and on paper or digitally, spend your time. Decide, how am I going to spend my time between now and whenever my final exams are? And then plug in all those study times. And as best you can, you want to try and put in study times a little bit every day between now and when your final exams are. And that schedule then becomes your guide, because then it tells you, what am I going to do? Well, my schedule says I'm going to do this. And there are so many websites out there that talk about studying that say, make a schedule and then stick with it. Because the best thing you have going for you is time. And if you can budget it out, a little bit every day goes a long, long way. You also want to know what resources you have available for the test. For students in a science class, maybe you have a periodic table or a list of formulas. If you're in a math class, what kind of calculator does the teacher allow? And in some classes, the teacher may even allow you to bring in a note sheet or a note card. And you want to be absolutely clear about what things you can bring in. Now, because this is 2021 and everyone has some form of technology, you also want to be clear about what forms of technology, if any, your teacher will allow you to use. And the last thing is know yourself. And I put this in here because I listen to my students when they say what helps them, and I got quite a few different answers. And I'm not going to say that their answers were wrong. They were right for them, but they're not always right for everyone else. So I put this down here saying know yourself, because some of the things I say may or may not work for you. But only you're going to know that, because you know yourself. Know what works for you and know what doesn't work for you. And be honest about that. So now, while you're studying, big thing is you want to remove distractions. Environment. You want to be in a place that's comfortable but not distracting. Not something that has things that can draw your attention away. Whether it's a window with people outside, a room with a big TV, or a gaming console, or a computer. You want to be aware of those things, because you know if those things draw you away, well, probably not the place you want to be. But you also want to be in a place where you can physically concentrate. Your posture has an effect. So laying down on your bed is probably not the best place to study, because when your body lies flat, it thinks, we're going to sleep now. And that's not what you want to be telling your body. You want to be upright in a firm chair that supports you. Now, food and drink, I tend to avoid it, but that's me. I hear from students that some food and drink actually helps them. So if that helps you, fine. But be honest. Don't just be eating mindlessly. Because one of the problems with food and drink is that can affect your body and it can cause you to lose focus. So you need to know what foods are okay and what foods are going to not be good, either because it'll cause you to be lethargic or it'll cause you to think about eating more of it later once you've finished it. Electronics. It seems like everyone has electronics these days. And what we're trying to do is we're trying to simulate as best we can the environment of the test. Now, some schools are more lax than others in terms of how much they allow students to use their cell phones, but I recommend that any device that gives you notifications, put it into airplane mode or just turn off your notifications so it's not buzzing and vibrating every 30 seconds. You need to be able to practice being concentrated on one thing for 5 minutes, for 10 minutes, 15 minutes at a time, without reaching for your device. Now that may mean missing out on something. That's true. But our goal is to be able to get you to focus for 30 minutes, for 60 minutes, for 90 minutes, however long your final exam is going to take. Noise. Now I put that twice because there's two minds on this. One is exterior noise from people, from places, things you can't control. You want to try and exclude those because any little noise is going to draw your attention away. But another form is music. Now, for some people, music can help them to focus, especially if it's soft, instrumental type music. But if you're just listening to music, jamming away and singing along, you're not really focused on the studying. You're more focused on the music. So for some students, listening to some music is okay, but for some students, they need quiet. And this comes down to knowing yourself. Remember, we're here to study. We're not here to try and distract ourselves. Because if we're distracting ourselves, we're not really making good use of the time we've given it. Now, while we study, there's probably going to be some frustrations because you're going to come across things that are difficult, that you may have learned but have since forgotten. So a couple things. Number one, breathe. Don't forget to breathe very deliberately. Take in nice deep breaths, hold them, let them back out. Also, write down your frustration. Write down what it is that's causing you problems because you want to capture that thought. You don't want it to disappear. And by writing it down, you've captured that thought because now you can revisit that thought later when you're in a calm, more relaxed mood, and maybe you can look at it from a different point of view. Or you can that can remind you to go talk to your teacher or go talk to some of your classmates to see if they're having the same issue. And maybe they can help you. Now, some students think that when they encounter frustration, they need to keep tackling it. And to me, that's not an efficient use of your time. It's actually much better just to move on to another topic. Whether that's another topic within the same subject, or maybe this whole subject is causing you a frustration, so close the books on that and go to a different topic. A few other things. You want to write your thoughts down, not only when you get frustrated, but when you have an insight or when you come across something that's important, you want to write it down because writing equals thinking. It's something that so many people have learned across time that if you think a thought, it's like a puff of smoke that just disappears. But when you write it down, you capture it. And by capturing it, you've reinforced it, because you force yourself to slowly write it down. Another thing is mix up the order, because especially if you have study guides, they're always going to be in the same order. So don't start from the beginning all the time. Start from the bottom and work up, or start from the middle and work up, or start from the middle and work down. Now, you also want to stick to your schedule. Now, that's actually a freeing thing for you, because if you've given yourself 30 minutes, Stick to the 30 minutes, and when you're done, close the book and go do whatever you scheduled next. But you want to stick to that because when you write that schedule, you have the long view of how much time you need for all your subjects. Now, you in the moment, you may say, well, I want to do this, but you have to take a step back and say, no. All this time has been scheduled so that you can maximize your performance. Is it uncomfortable in the moment to stick to a schedule? Yeah, it is. But we're trying to promote more long-term thinking. So once you've got that schedule written down, you want to stick to it as best as you can. Now, what about after studying? Because a lot of people think they just study and then they take the test and that's it. I'm not here to promote that. Instead, I'm here to promote it in terms of treating studying like a workout. Do you work out 24/7? No, you don't. What is a workout? A workout is designed to stimulate your body, and then when you rest, when you sleep, that's when the benefit happens. But if you try to work yourself for 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 hours a day, your body's just going to break down. Well, your mind can be like that too. You need to take breaks. You need to take rest. Because it's in the resting where your body repairs the damage that's done to it in a workout. Likewise with the mind. It's when you rest, that's when the mind takes what you've given it and it puts it all together. After you've done studying, remember to do something fun. Again, know yourself. What is fun for you may not be fun for someone else, but what you find enjoyable, do that. Give yourself that reward for sitting there and for focusing and for studying. Now, like I said, the benefit of the workout comes with sleep. Same thing with studying. Get sleep. All the websites talk about if you want to help yourself to study, you need to give yourself sleep. 8 hours, preferably at one time. Because there's really some magic that goes on with your body and your mind if you can get yourself 8 hours of sleep. So make sure when you set your schedule, budget that in. Give yourself those 8 hours. Now, after you study, remember how we talked about you write down your frustrations? Talk to other students about that. If it's difficult for you, maybe it was difficult for them, or maybe it's not, and they have an insight that can help. And then, maybe you need to go talk to your teacher. Either talk to them in person or send an email and say, I'm having difficulty with this, can you please help me? And hopefully your teacher will respond quickly and give you a response. Now, maybe you won't be able to find a teacher, but you may be able to find some other adult, maybe a friend, maybe an adult friend, a parent, someone in your family, someone in your circle of friends, a friend's parent maybe, who can help you if your teacher doesn't get back to you in a quickly, timely manner. Now, what about before testing? Well, remember, you want to be sure that whatever you're allowed to have, make sure you have all those resources available. Make sure you have the right pens or pencils. Does your calculator have the right batteries, or is it charged up? Do you have all the right sheets? Does it fit the parameters? Is it a full sheet? Is it an index card? Have you filled out whatever needs to be filled out to help benefit you? If you're feeling anxious, here are two little quick exercises. Take 10 deep breaths. It's called the 4-7-8. You inhale for 4 seconds, then you hold it for 7, and then you exhale for 8. And it's very important that you exhale for 8 seconds. And then you do this 10 times. Now, people think they're going to suffocate or asphyxiate or pass out. It doesn't happen. And it's actually breathing out for 8 that people find the hardest. You just have to slowly let the air out. And what that does is that helps to calm you down, helps to calm your body and release some endorphins that help to still any anxiety feelings that you're having. The other thing you can do, this is more for your mind, is to ground yourself. So what you do is when you're in the room, you want to find 5 things that you can see around you. So move your head from side to side and find 5 different things. Then, after that, find 4 things you can touch. And then 3 things that you can hear, 2 things you can smell, and then 1 thing you can taste. So see, touch, hear, smell, taste. Just find those. And what that does is that helps to place you in your physical environment. Now, during testing, you want to ask the teacher if there's any questions that are unclear. Now, you want to be very careful about how you word the question, because some students, when they're unclear about this, they ask the question in such a way that they're kind of asking the teacher what the right answer is, or are they on the right track? And some teachers get turned off by that, and some teachers will dismiss the student and not even answer the question. So you want to be very careful about, are you asking the teacher how to do this question? Or what you may want to say instead is this what this question is asking for? Just try and restate the question in another way. Now, if you know you don't know something, just move on. It's not worth your time to agonize over it, because staring at it is probably not going to help. So you want to focus your time on the things that you can work on. And then along with that, be aware of the amount of time remaining. Some teachers will put a big timer up in the front of the room. Sometimes they'll write down on the board the time until the test ends, and sometimes they'll call it out. But it'll all be different. But if in case they don't, you may want to have a watch with you or some other allowed timing device so that you know how much time you've got. Now, what about afterwards? Number 1, congratulate yourself. You got through it. That's worth a congratulations. So say it out loud. Say, good job, I did that. Now, at that moment, when you walk out, realizing that worrying is not going to change your grade. So, keep saying that. You've done your best, and now you need to focus on the next thing. Now, what is that next thing? Well, maybe another test that's coming up, or maybe you're done for the day, or maybe you're going to lunch. Whatever that next thing is. Or maybe this is the last test and now you're on vacation. Focus on that. Whatever that next thing is, be looking forward to that and let that be your focus. Now, some mindsets overall in terms of studying and testing. Keep things in perspective. Like I said, you want to know what your grades are going in, and hopefully your final exam should not have that big of an effect on your grade. It will have an effect, but hopefully it won't have too much of an effect. Be kind to your mind. You want to think positively. Negative thoughts only ensure that you're going to sabotage yourself. So, are you going to make mistakes? Yeah, we all do. And that's okay. Be kind. Don't beat yourself up. Likewise, be kind to your body. I said before that you want to be getting sleep. You also want to be giving your body the food that it needs to function. Now, we all know that big, large meals make you feel sluggish. So big meals right before you study may not be the best thing. Likewise, things that don't agree with you, which is different for everyone, but you know what foods don't agree with you, you want to avoid them. And similarly, foods with a lot of sugar, they give you a quick jolt, but then there's a crash afterwards. And so studying is not going to be very effective after you have a bunch of sugar. Remember what goals you set. That's why I said at the beginning, set a goal for each of your final exams and keep looking back at that. This is why you're spending the time. This is why you're turning off your phone. This is why you're foregoing some things right now, is because of these goals. And then ultimately, all final exams, like things that are unpleasant, I always remember this phrase, this too shall pass. This is just a moment in time, and it will pass. So all we can do is do the best that we can. Now, I want to give you a few tactics that help in some specific subjects. Now, I don't teach all these subjects, and so if you want some more specifics, I'll give you some more at the end, some directions for you. So specifically, math science tactics. One thing you can do is start with a problem working with someone and tag team solve it, meaning one person explains out loud how they solve it and the other person writes it down. And the other person just writes down whatever the first person says. And then by the end, you look at it and then you see, did what I described match up with what was written? If not, examine what you said and then switch off. In some cases, what you can do is you can start with the answer and see if you can work backwards to the beginning of the problem. Now, this may be difficult for some problems, and sometimes you may end up with a dead end where you can't do it, and that happens sometimes. Or you can make up a problem, because maybe you're only given one or two examples. Well, take the structure and change up the numbers and see if you can solve that. Now, often in math or in science, you have some formulas, and one thing you can do is a formula rapid fire, where you or a partner just show each other a formula and you say, okay, what's it used for? Now, what about for vocab or terminology? So this is something like your English class, your history, foreign language will do this, biology will do this. The old-fashioned flashcards, I find, work. The one thing that's nice about flashcards is, as you get them right or wrong, you can sort them. And the ones that you get right, well, you know you don't have to worry about them as much. You can set them off to the side. But the ones that you missed, those are the ones you're going to keep focusing on. Word association. Sometimes in addition to a definition, what some people find helpful is they associate one word with another word, whether it looks the same or sounds the same or has some connection that makes sense that helps them memorize it. Or maybe an acronym. Another way to do this is what I call tag team rapid fire, where a partner has a list of words and they're just going to list them off for you one at a time, and you're going to tell them what the meaning or the translation is, and they're just going to keep tally. Check, check, yes, no, and then at the end, they'll show you the results. You don't want to show them one at a time because if you get several wrong in a row, you get disheartened about that. And so it's better just to hold back the results until the end. And then finally, self-talk. This is especially helpful if you're by yourself. You want to speak the words out loud. For some reason, the way we humans are wired, when you say something inside your head, it activates a different part of the brain than when you say it out loud. I can't explain why. It just is. And so talking out loud and then hearing your own voice say it can help. Now, what about if you have dates or things that happen in sequence? What I will often suggest is say, take 10 things at sequence, draw them one at a time. And what you want to do is you want to try and place them in the correct order in sequence. So let's say I have the Battle of 1812. Then I have the Revolutionary War. Okay, that's before that. All right, the Civil War. Well, that's back there. French and Indian War. That's up there. And then Spanish-American War. That's going to be way over here. And so can you place all these in the correct place in relation to each other? Because oftentimes some people have a hard time with certain dates, but if they know what happens before or after an easier date to remember, that helps them. Now, if taking this many is too much, then what I would say is just draw 2 items and just see, can you put them before or after another? Now, the other tactics, always go back to your teacher. They're a specialist, and they have had the most experience learning this content, which means they will have more specific tactics to help you. Now, if you can't find a teacher, like I said, ask your parents, see if they have some friends. If you need to reach out for a tutor, they can probably help set up a plan for you, give you some ideas that way. But the one thing I always go back to is repetition and feedback. You have to keep doing this over and over, but a lot of people think they just do it over and over by themselves. No, you also need to be getting feedback on your work. You need to be knowing if you're right or wrong, and not just knowing if you're right or wrong, but how to correct it. And I think that's the part that a lot of people miss on, is how to do it right. What is it that I'm doing wrong? If you're just being told you're wrong, 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 that's not feedback. That's demoralizing. And what you need to do is you need to find a friend, a parent, a teacher, someone who can come alongside you and say, here's why you're doing this wrong, and here's how you can correct it. That's effective feedback. That's going to make the best use of your time. So, after all this, I'm going to end with one quote. There's only one way to eat an elephant, a bite at a time. And so for a lot of people, thinking about final exams is like trying to eat an elephant. Well, we're just going to eat it one bite at a time. We're going to set goals. We're going to set a schedule. And we're going to stick to that schedule as best we can. I get that life happens. It happens to all of us. But if you set that schedule and you allot your time between now and whenever your final exams are, that's going to allow you to slowly eat this elephant. Now, if there's any way I can help, please reach out to me. There's my email right there, and I'd be more than happy to listen to your specific situation and see how I can be of any assistance to you. So thanks for watching, and I wish you all the best of luck on your finals.